Welcome, everyone, to Talking Back to Suicide. This is one of your hosts, Dr. Diane Kaufman, although I prefer to be called Diana for my creative self. I'm a poet, artist, humanism and medicine awardee, and a retired child psychiatrist. I'm the founder director of the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention that uses the power of art to educate, connect, express, and heal. And I'm with my co-host, Kino Isaac, coming to us from South Africa. And Kino is a DJ, music producer, entrepreneur, and a mental health advocate for independent artists. And our special guest today on Talking Back to Suicide is Chad Moses, the Senior Director of Outreach and Experience of TWLOHA, To Write Love on Her Arms, which is a nonprofit movement dedicated to presenting hope and finding help for people struggling with depression, addiction, self-injury, and suicide. To Write Love on Our Arms exists to encourage, inform, inspire, and to invest in treatment and recovery, and they're based in Melbourne, Florida. All this began in 2006 with one person's story on a MySpace page and a box of t-shirts. Through word of mouth spreading to friends and family, then at music festivals and school campuses, the message and meaning of To Write Love on Her Arms continues to impact so many people. The empathic and courageous sharing of one person's story by a friend inspired countless others to be authentic in sharing their own stories of vulnerability, and by doing so has created experiences of belonging and love. Their goal is to move people from a place of shame and isolation into community, from hopelessness to hope, and to have people receive the help they need and deserve. To Write Love on Her Arms manifests this by offering online mental health skills building, mood lifting music playlists, connecting people to mental health resources, providing scholarships for counseling and professional help, and having The Hopeful, which is a free self-care app designed for daily use. To Write Love on Her Arms describes themselves as a force that is stronger than stigma and a growing chorus of hope. So welcome, Chad, to Talking Back to Suicide, and we're really delighted to have you with us today.
Right on. Well, Diana, Kino, great to see you. Great to finally get this chat on the books. I know we've been planning this for several months now, so I've been looking forward to this exact moment. Thanks for having me.
Chad, could you begin by sharing the story that goes back to, I think, 2006 and how that initiated such a impactful movement?
Right on. Yeah. So our name is long, and Diana, you crushed it. You even got the acronym right. We call it TWLOHA, but To Write Love on Her Arms originally was a story, like you mentioned in that intro. The name itself, we're not trying to imply that one gender struggles more than any other with mental health challenges. But when this began in 2006, there was no business plan that this would be a nonprofit. There was no idea that this would turn into what it is today. It was really singularly focused on our friend Renee, the her. So back almost 20 years ago, Renee's story was one of cocaine addiction and self-injury. And through the encouragement of some friends, she decided that it was time to get help. But she pleaded with them that, maybe she could have one last night with her vices before turning the page. So that night she went to a party at her drug dealer's house. She had one last binge on cocaine. And late that night, she locked herself in the bathroom and she took a razor and wrote the word "fuck up" across her left forearm. The next day, she went to enter treatment, and they actually turned her away due to the drugs that were still in her system. They didn't have a detox unit. They said, right now, you're too great of a risk. But if you can get clean and stay clean for 5 days, then we can try this again. So at that point, Renee took a really brave step. And instead of going back to her dealer's house, she crashed at a friend's place, a guy named David. And David was also in recovery. So he knew what the next 5 days were going to look like. While she rested, he made some phone calls. He rallied the troops. He called some friends together. And when she woke up, she found that she was in the middle of some good company. These are people that said, look, this road ahead, it's going to be difficult, but this isn't about you anymore. This is going to be an us thing. For the next 5 days, we're going to get through this together. So that's what they did. They made plans to share each other's stories, to learn more about each other. They went to basketball games and rock shows to keep her distracted, got her plenty of cigarettes and coffee for the coming down, books for the road ahead. And over those days and nights, this idea to write love on her arms came out. The thought was, what she put on her arm, that fuck up, it was not a statement of profanity. It was a statement of identity, right? So to write love on our arms was a goal that, hey, maybe together we could rewrite this script. So no, Renee, you are not your past. No, Renee, you are not your current struggles. Renee, you are worthy of belief simply because you have air in your lungs. That's what we're standing behind. Wherever you go, we're going to get there together. So at the end of those 5 days, a guy named Jamie, he was David's roommate, he asked her, what would you say if your story had an audience? How would you feel about sharing this? And she said, I think if one person could relate to any part of my story, then maybe there'd be a purpose for some of the pain in my life. So the next day she checked into treatment, and Jamie sat down and wrote a 2-page story about what those last 5 days looked like. He called it To Write Love on Our Arms for the same reason I told you. He put the story on MySpace because it was 2006 and that's what we did. And he made about 200 shirts with a simple logo that just read To Write Love on Her Arms. And the hope was to sell those shirts to offset some of Renee's medical costs. Well, we had some friends in touring bands at the time. They decided to wear the shirt as they played their shows. And as they traveled, people would get curious. They would Google the name, they would read the story, and they would say, Renee actually sounds a whole lot like my dad. And Renee sounds like my best friend. And, if I'm honest, Renee sounds a lot like me, are hope and help options for me as well. So in very little time, the story took on a life of its own. And ever since, we've just been pulling that thread, trying to connect as many people to as many people as possible. And here we are just about a month away from our 20th birthday, trying to do the same, to make sure people have access points to the care that they deserve, to ensure that people don't feel alone in their stories, to ensure that people have a touch point to hope, to community, to this idea that better days are ahead, that changes are still possible.
I want to say that on your website, you have a link to the original essay, right? Which I also read.
Yeah.
Beautifully written and inspiring. But I want to ask you this: what were the steps that were taken? Like, oh, this is blowing up in a good way. Let's take it to the next step. What could you tell us a little bit about the journey towards creating an organization?
I wish I could. In hindsight, we definitely see a lot of steps that we probably could have done a little bit better, but really this was all about catching up to this perception of what we have become. So when I first began working for the organization, this was back in 2008, I was serving as an intern. And our entire purpose during that intern term was to get our email account and our MySpace messages down to 0, to ensure that every single message that came in had a response. And that is true to today. We are not powered by AI. We are not bots. Everything that is written to us is received, is responded to. And that even goes back to the original name, that we haven't changed the name because that keeps us grounded. That the only way to change the big numbers around depression, around addiction, anxiety, self-injury, suicide, you can't affect the big numbers without affecting the individuals that make this up. That we're not going to move the needle statistically without being present to the individual stories that we come across day in and day out. So we wildly outkicked our coverage from the get-go. And a lot of that, I think, was indicative of how hungry people were to have a conversation, a candid conversation about mental health. And then also, people felt like they never had a sense of realistic connection to people that would be encouraging. That, so often when people would picture what it would look like to begin a therapeutic relationship, their mental picture was someone that looked a lot like Sigmund Freud, an old white guy with Coke bottle frames that would sit on a couch and talk in a funny accent to you about your deepest fears and dreams. And we were there just saying, no, steps towards positive mental health can be a lot more familiar. It can start with conversations with friends, with family. We can grow this into peer support. If you need a therapeutic outlet, we'll find something and someone that looks and thinks and talks like you. But you are someone that is unique and relatable. So that was really the posture from the get-go. And from there, it was just about scaling. How do we do this better? How do we do this more? How do we make this accessible beyond our hometown in Central Florida, but up the eastern seaboard, across the country, into Canada, South America? By the time I became an intern, one of my first jobs was to respond to our international account, seeing emails coming from Sweden and South Africa, Australia and Micronesia, from all over the place, really painting this picture that there is far more that connects us than could ever separate us geographically or culturally. But we all have the ability to feel joy, and we all have the ability to feel pain. So then the question became, how do we fill those gaps? How do we close this distance? How do we ensure that people feel seen and heard and cared for?
As you were speaking, Chad, I was thinking of the many thoughts I was having that you were inspiring. I was thinking about in medical school, right? Or maybe even a psychiatry residency. There's not a quote lecture about love. And so important.
Yeah. It strikes me that it might just be too powerful of a thing to adequately define in a textbook, right? It's that if there's 8 billion people on the planet, that means there's going to be 8 billion ways that we interpret betrayal and fidelity and loyalty and care. So that's something that's gonna change, not just individual to individual, but how an individual progresses through time and maturity and the lessons learned along the way. I think, should anyone write a thesis on love, that's going to take an infinite amount of pages to adequately touch. And even from there, what matters at the end of the day is not our definition on this thing, but your relation to it. In what ways have you, Diana, in what ways have you, Kino, felt cared for, felt showed up for, felt like you really deserve the space that you were occupying? That is what love is. And it's probably going to sound different across oceans and across time zones and across even this screen, but it's something worth pursuing.
Sadly, in August 2019, a coworker and friend of mine, her first name's Stacy, I learned that she had died of suicide. Stacy was 48 years old, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, wonderful woman, excellent clinician. I admired Stacy for who she was. And she was also the mother of 2 sets of young twins. And she developed a serious and recurrent psychiatric illness in and out of the hospital. And she ended up killing herself in a very dramatic fashion. And I learned of her death on Facebook when I saw postings about her, and it was just that she had died. And I reached out to a mutual friend and learned of what had happened. And at that point, my visceral response of grieving her was I felt that her, in this situation, a psychiatric illness, although there are many reasons why a person could have suicidal thoughts, but I felt that her illness was a cancer that had devoured her, because there was not one bit of the real Stacy who would have ever done what she did. And what happened, Chad, was about 2 weeks after she died, I was walking down a parallel street to where I live here in Portland. I was walking down a street named Lovejoy. So I'm walking down Lovejoy, headed towards Starbucks. The street, which I had walked down a zillion times before, is tree lined. And this particular day, a tree caught my attention because it had branches coming off a part of the trunk that looked unusual to me. And I took a photo of the tree, and either kneeling next to the tree or when we got to Starbucks, when I got to Starbucks, I wrote down the words, "Just like this tree, we all yearn to grow. Hope lives, shame kills. Every day is Suicide Prevention Day. Take good care of yourself, and may you grow ever stronger in your love." And I sent the photo and my words to Amanda Meador, an artist collaborator, asking her to create a poster, which she did most beautifully. But when Mandy sent me back the poster, the roots of the tree were dangling without any earth around them. And I said, "Mandy, you have to ground the tree, right, in the strength of the earth for stability, nutrition, and also beauty with flowers and grass, just like you have to ground people."
Yeah.
And I was thinking that groundedness can also be love, right?
Totally. No, I think what you're saying absolutely resonates and makes a ton of sense. I remember sitting in on a panel discussion about suicide prevention. This was probably about a decade ago, and someone asked during the Q&A for my definition of suicide, and of course they weren't looking for the Webster dictionary, but they were beneath that asking the why of suicide, right? And fumbling through it, I came across this working definition that I've continued to employ over the years, that suicide is the fatal result of a restricted perspective. That when we aren't grounded, when it's solely our mental health challenges, our depression, our anxiety, our relationship with psychoses, with addiction, if that is in the driver's seat, that is driving us away from human connection, from people who are there to be more reliable narrators than we can be to our own story. People that can remind us that we are often more self-damning than our friends, our family are of us. But all of these things, depression, addiction, self-injury, anxiety, they have a way of thriving in silence, of pushing us away, of making us believe that we have waived our right to interpersonal connection. So whenever we can interrupt that cycle, whenever we can get another voice in there, whenever we can get someone to challenge how we are viewing the world and our place in it, that is going to keep us safer. And you deserve more than just one lifeline. When you're in crisis, you feel like you're in free fall, and one person reaching out, that can stop that free fall, but no one's going to tell you that a tightrope is the gold standard for safety if you're in free fall. We want to build a cargo net. We want to connect as many crisscrossing lines of support and connection and community as possible. So I love that you challenge your artist friend to make sure this is grounded. You don't need to be a tree out in the middle of the vacuum of space, but be a tree that's confident in where you're standing, because that's going to allow other trees some courage to take root as well.
I know you're listening aptly, and also being a musician, and it seems like To Write Love on Our Arms, it has also been intertwined with music. And Kino's a musician. I want to join the conversation.
Yeah, Chad, what you're doing, it's quite a unique project. I mean, it's the first time I've heard of something, like this. I mean, there's many organizations where there is some similarities, but the name itself and the story behind it, that's a big wow. So I want to start with, what we were discussing pre-show. Diana and I were having a conversation about what's going on around the world and what's also going on in our personal life. And correct me if I'm wrong, you said this organization started off in 2006.
Correct. Yeah.
2006. Now, the conversation Dan and I were having is, since 2006, what keeps you going and motivated? Because at times, in my personal capacity, I feel like I wouldn't say not doing enough. I'm doing the best I can. And I see on your website you have here, hope and help can't exist without the other. And I was telling Diana, at times I feel all of this work that we do, this humanitarian work that we do, besides all the podcasts that I'm on, having my own NGO, being out there daily to assist and help people. But at times, humanity can be so selfish. So, how does your organization now get past that and get that message across to people that we need each other in order to help each other? How do I get past that personally?
Yeah. It can be really difficult to consume your own prescription, right? That for years, we've been pounding the table saying people need other people. You deserve community. And what can really be a struggle in moments where you become an authoritative voice in a field is you believe that your value is in helping other people, that you have the answers, but the answers are for everyone else. Then you need to wake up to realizing that you aren't immune to any of the pain that you're trying to address either. So for me, being at this personally for 18 years, the organization being around for 20 of it, this would have been utterly unsustainable if we didn't practice what we preached, which is community. So, I think the goal of every nonprofit, of every non-government organization, every charity is eventually to work yourself out of a job, right? I would not lament a second if I woke up tomorrow and read a news headline that said that the problem of suicide has been solved, that depression is no longer plaguing our friends and our family, that anxiety is 100% treatable in 100% of the cases. The reality is, as long as people have walked this earth, we have felt pain, but we've also felt hope. So I'm here because I'm stubborn, and I'm here because there are so many people behind me, in front of me, beside me, above me, and below me that have kept me filled up, that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And to announce the moments that you are approaching burnout, to get the rest, to realize that rest is part of the work, that we can't So I'm a big fan of Survivor. A new season has just started. So the ideas of outplay, outwit, outlast are at the tip of my tongue. But you do that in a game setting. You don't do that in real life. That depression is not something that you're going to outthink. That anxiety is not something that you're going to outplay or outstrategize. That this life isn't something to just outlast, but we are actually in this together. So take the time that you need. Take the time that it demands for you to feel refueled, for you to feel inspired, for you to remember what's at stake, and to remember that the things that we are saying are possible for everyone else remain possible for you as well. So there was a big shift in my life. I've been touring consistently. We're talking about, hundreds of days, about half of the year I'm traveling. And that can get lonely, and that can get heavy, and that can at times get dark. But there was a marked shift about 12 years ago when I started leaving daily emails for my team about interactions that I would have with people at these music festivals, connecting them to my lived experience, really making my job feel relatable, and encouraging the people that don't get to see the world that I get to see. So Kino, you had a short question on how I do it, and that was a very long answer because it is so multifaceted, right? But I'd say that having other people be part of the journey is hands down the only reason why I'm still in this office 18 years later.
Yeah, having other people, which can be quite hard and quite difficult. And that's also something I was explaining to Diana. When you out there, fighting a certain battle, and it doesn't always have to be related to mental illness, you sort of find yourself alone. And the people that was once with you is no longer around when you're going through, I'm just going to call it X, you
Yeah.
know. And then that makes you now, like what I was explaining to, and I feel like, okay, why am I even doing this? What's the point? Is it even worth it? Do people even care?
Hmm.
You know? And I bring this up because I feel there's so many nonprofits around the world that have the same mandate as all of us here on this podcast, and they just feel like closing their doors because they just feel the same way. So, a basic question I can ask you, you know, what motivates you when you wake up in the morning?
The opportunity for conversations like this, that we can, across two different continents, across a vast distance, have a conversation that's going to, at the end of the day, I believe, encourage someone to take a first step. That there's going to be something that Diana says, that you say, Kino, maybe that I say, that helps someone feel a little bit less isolated in what they do. And beyond that, it's the understanding that, we didn't get to these dark places overnight. We're not going to leave them overnight either, but there is beauty in the progress, that we're not looking for perfection. My friend Johanna says that when we talk about recovery, we don't recover to utopia. We don't recover to perfection or to paradise. We recover to normal life, right? So there is still some beauty even in the questions and confusions that come across our plate, even when we feel like we're better than we were last year or the year before or the year before that. But when I, specifically look at my job of showing up at music festivals, there are festivals that, as I'm filling out the contract to be there, I got names and I got faces in mind. There's people that I need to see year over year to see how they're doing. And I know that not every recovery journey is going to be linear. I'm not always going to see progress, but I am always going to see my friend. That nothing that they are going through is going to change how I feel about them. And that's true of my own story. When we talk about things like depression, addiction, anxiety, self-injury, thoughts of suicide, that's me. And I was able to navigate those valleys with the help of some friends that ultimately loved me despite all the reasons I was giving them not to. That I was capable of so many things, but one thing I could not accomplish was convincing my friends that I was unworthy of their love. It was never my decision to be loved, and thank God they kept showing up. So I want to reflect that same grace to every person I meet. And I hope and I pray that I get to see them 52 weeks down the road, that I get to see how that story is unfolding, that we can talk about lessons learned and the 5 steps forward and the 2 steps back, this cha-cha of living through life, and realize that we are all making up this dance as we go. But like any dance, it's going to be more fun with more people, right? That you are never expected to get through this life alone. Our hope is just to find some more dancing partners for each other.
Chad, I once read a definition or a description of happiness, and the description was, happiness is that which happens.
I like that. I like that a whole lot.
Could you explain a bit, Chad, about when you mention going to music festivals, how does To Write Love on Her Arms integrate with the music festivals? What are you doing there, and what is the organization doing? And also, you're also a musician, right?
I am not. No, you don't want to
Oh,
hear me make music.
okay.
But I am a fan of music. I've been able
Okay,
to,
fan of music.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I've been able to live a life that's been very music adjacent. But don't you get me on a stage. That
sure.
will make,
Okay.
yes, happiness is what happens. That shouldn't happen. So, so yeah, so again, over these last 20 years, we have become the most consistent mental health voice across the world of live music in North America. We are frequently at, 20, 25, 30 different live music and lifestyle events each year. And when we show up, it's really less of a business strategy and more of just, um, for the sake of simplicity and marketing. We want to be where people naturally come together, and music happens to bring a lot of people together. Music is something that reminds us that there's things in life worth singing about. There's things in life worth dancing about. There's things in life worth screaming about. And there's things in life worth sharing with other people. That these festivals would not exist if you didn't show up to it. Otherwise, it would just be sound coming from a stage, but you showing up to absorb and receive that sound, that's what makes this place special. So we show up looking like a number of any other vendors that are on site. We sell t-shirts to help do fundraising, to get the word out. And then you'll also see right next to a booth where we have all of our merchandise, what we call an activation, which is really just an intentional space for people to rethink how we think about mental health. So we never show up talking about diagnoses. We're not there saying, write a card about your depression or about your anxiety or about your life with schizoaffective disorder. We take it a step back. We ask really simple questions about just asking, hey, what's one thing that you really wish you could say? Something maybe to a friend or a family member, something to some version of yourself. What's something that you wish you could say that you never felt the freedom to say it, or you're afraid that the chance to say it has passed you by? Whatever it is, get it out of your head, out of your heart, put it on this piece of paper, and we're going to put it on the wall for the week. And what we find in time is that a lot of people are wanting to say the same thing. Stuff like, I miss you. Stuff like, I forgive you. Stuff like, I love you. Stuff like, I wish you knew the real me. Stuff like, you deserve to be here. And then about halfway through the week, we flip the script. We invite people to come back and take a card that represents something that you needed to hear. And the take home is tangible and it's poetic, but it's very real, that if you can feel a sense of connection to someone anonymously on paper at a music festival, then we believe that you can feel that same sense of connection with someone when you go back home, face to face, consistently. That if you can speak this truth out loud, if you can get this on paper and not spontaneously combust, not get struck by lightning, well then, hey, that gives us courage to keep the sharing going. That who are some other people that I can let into this piece of my life? So we go with the hope of fundraising. We go with the hope of creating accessible points to further conversation about mental health. And then we also distribute literature that allows people to find affordable resources by their own zip code. So if you're listening to this in the United States, we have resources in every postal code, coast to coast, that operate on affordable bases, whether you're looking for peer support or a counselor or even inpatient treatment options. We have those available through our Find Help tool on our website. And then lastly, Diana, you also mentioned in the intro our Find Help tool. So if you go to, you mentioned our mental health toolkit. So if you go to mentalhealthtoolkit.co, you're going to find a list of actionable steps, tools that can be used, in short bursts from 5 to 10 minute tools that help you build out your utility belt of self-care. So we're getting the word out about all these resources, really trying to break down the barrier and lift the veil on how someone can interact with therapeutic options for help. We often don't do it because we don't know where to start. So we try to bring that starting line as close to you as possible.
Yeah, I was thinking, Chad, that music is a lot like life in the sense that without the next note, there is no song.
Yeah.
Right? And in suicidal thinking, one can imagine, but in a sense, you're like really think right? That there is no next option, right? The only option is out of this life to kill myself, right? If we could only know that this can change, this can get better. There are ways with support and help and love and treatment and intervention and finding happiness again in what happens, right? Yeah. On some level, like that next step, because it's almost like you're frozen in your mind. And I'm thinking even your to write love on her arm, the act of writing the next letter, like you think that the story's over.
Yeah.
You want it to end, or it is ended, so I need to exit, right? Yeah. But to write the next letter, right, is being inspired to live for another moment.
Yeah, and even in the moments where you are paralyzed into inaction, where you don't know where to find the pen to write the next letter, or even that pen itself feeling too heavy to lift up, you just showing up has changed this place. That's another metaphor with the music. You know, I mean that on a metaphorical level, on a metaphysical level, and on a literal level. When you, Kino, show up to your favorite show, your favorite band is playing in your favorite venue, and you could come up with several different excuses on why you shouldn't go. Just realize this, you being there has changed everything about that place. That's how sound works. Sound doesn't exist on its own. Sound exists only when it's bouncing off something else. Kino, you being there changes how everyone in that room hears those notes. That it would not sound the same without you there. That's what's at stake. I'm not here to guilt you into surviving another day. I'm here to beg you to allow me to hear this world, to see this world with you in it. Ever since you came into the world, I've never taken a breath without you here. So I don't know if this place keeps spinning without you. Don't let me find that out. I love this place with you. We can get through this, and we can get through it together. It's not about you dragging yourself to the finish line. It's about ensuring that you have support along the way.
Yeah, I got to agree with what you said about music festivals, and thank you for that. And yeah, same, right back at you,
Yeah.
I love having you here as well. What you said about music festivals is so true. And it doesn't matter how small or big it actually is. Like, I mean, we do our own events as well. I'm talking about nightclubs. It's not as big as your Ultras or Tomorrowland or something similar. But there's so much unity, with the people that walk into that venue, right? You got different cultural backgrounds, different religions, different races. There's no conflict. All they are doing is they're there and they are enjoying themselves united and dancing with each other, listening to that DJ or that performer. I mean, if you go on, for example, for any listener who hasn't watched Ultra or Tomorrowland video, and you go on and you watch these festivals and you see the amount of different flags from different nations that are in the air, how these people are united at this music festival. No conflict, no depression, no anxiety. And then you look at the global world and all the conflict between these countries, you think now, wow, that's the power of music. That's the power of festivals. We can be united. As the Tomorrowland slogan goes, we are one. Going out to a music festival or going out to a nightclub is not only about getting wasted, right? It's not the only point of that's on the agenda. Go out and get wasted, and come back home. There's so much more to it because the moment you walk into that venue, depending who's hosting it, but I always wanted people to walk into my venue and just leave the whole world behind them behind at the door. And when you come in there, it's like nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And that's how it feels for me. You know, that's how it really does feel for me. And that's the experience I've always wanted to create it as a DJ or when I was hosting my own events. Leave it all behind. Now whole different world.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. So I agree. And we need more of it. There was actually a post I did a while back saying that, after COVID, things died off. You don't really get that vibe anymore. People are too afraid to go out. We hear about all these shootings that are taking place, in certain nightclubs all around the world. There's just so much conflict, right? No matter how big or small it is, at the macro and at the micro. But I've just been motivating that we just need more of this to happen. We don't need more, churches built. And I got nothing against religion. I'm a Catholic myself. You know, we don't need more religious gatherings happening here, there, everywhere, all over the place. We've got all these false prophets and false pastors, that are just popping up each and every single day. But we need more music festivals. And I even reach out to the religions where it's not allowed. And I do my best. I never win, but just to show them the importance of it. Look at this. Look at what happens. Look at how much unity there is, But yeah, just another ambitious goal,
Yeah, but I think it hits to the heart of it, because you can leave, that you can leave that conversation as look at what happens, or you can take it a step further and say, come and see what happens. Come and see how this feels. And you're totally right. It's one thing that that it was really cool to see festivals return after isolation, after COVID measures lightened up. And you would see week after week at these shows that people would have to warm up to this idea of a proximity, of coming back together. And it did feel like, those moments where you're taking a good Saturday nap and something wakes you up a little too early. Your body wasn't ready to wake up yet. So it's hard to engage with the real world until you take those first couple steps, until you get that first sip of coffee, until something calls you back to your senses. Something calls you back to what did feel familiar, what felt true back in the day. And what festivals really allow us to do is to tap into pieces of ourselves that we forgot, that we believed we outgrew. There is this culture of play that exists at festivals where people are giving little trinkets to each other, little gifts, just anything to make you feel seen and bring a smile to your face. That doesn't happen in the real world, but these are moments that we tap into, that we can get back to a more innocent version of ourselves. What were we like before we learned what opinions we were supposed to have, or the people that we were supposed to hang out with and the people that we weren't? But what if we realize that we are all just trying to work through this together? When you look at any event, you are going to have two types of people that show up. One, people that this is a special treat, that this is something we've been looking forward to. We're celebrating something. And then you're also going to have another group of people that this is a retreat. This is me trying to make sense of the world around me, because out there things are scary and things are uncertain, but in here things make more sense. So even though you got two different groups of people, we're all here experiencing this as a commonality. So I think that is going to be a key step into healing our human race and healing our stories and healing our communities, is realizing that, yeah, we're approaching this life from different angles, but we all wound up at the same place. So what are the ways that I can dance with the people dancing and cry with the people that are crying? There's space for all of it, that you don't have to deny any piece of yourself in order to be fully accepted in these places.
I think too that music, song can help us share experiences and discuss topics in a way that resonates and in metaphorically and actually resonates with us, whereas it's hard to bring up those topics in other ways. And I'll give an example of that. Just the other day, I was thinking about polarity of thinking, black and white type thinking, all or nothing. It's all good or it's all terrible. And in a suicidal state of mind, there can be not even black and white thinking, right? But metaphorically speaking, you're in the darkness, that quote blackness, and there's no way out. And then just the idea of approaching this creatively. And I went on Bing AI to like video creator, and the prompt was create a flower with black and white outer petals that is rotating, and as the flower is blossoming, you see all the petals are different colors, and the stamens are different colors too. Right? And so created that visual. And then I started remembering Cyndi Lauper's song, True Colors.
True Colors.
And even this morning was listening to the song and thinking of it in a way to communicate, right? The black and white thinking, the multicolor, right, of our lives. So I think that creativity in the arts, and especially music, right? And I think we know that personally, as well as there's a tremendous amount of research on the usefulness of music, right? Yeah. In memory and connection, and in, I think, tapping into our emotions in a way that we may not be so accessible to in kind of a regular conversation. What are your thoughts about what I just shared?
Well, I think Cindy's a prophet, for sure. You know, I love that song. And I think it speaks to what we want to be true about ourselves. To hear someone say, I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. Yes. Not that your colors matched mine, not that your palette was aesthetically pleasing to my eye, but rather you were living into the truth of who you are. And that's why I love you. Not that you can be a mini me, not that you can buy what I'm selling you, but you being you is what makes you utterly lovable and irreplaceable. So yeah, you know, I think what you mentioned about Cyndi is true about all of our favorite artists, all of our favorite songs, all of our favorite albums. They're our favorite because they remind us of something true in our own lives, that we can feel a little less lonely, or we can help build our own sense of emotional vocabulary by someone putting to words things that have felt scary to really put a finger on that's what I've been feeling, that's what I've been experiencing. And the beauty in seeing these artists that have had years in the field or even decades in the field is hear how those songs change over time. Hear how the meanings have taken on a different life. That's something that felt like, you know, a song of defeat can be a monument to the progress that we've made years down the road. That music is a living art. It's not stagnant. The Mona Lisa doesn't change anymore, right? It's hanging up in the Louvre, and it's going to be there until someone with more money than me buys it to put it in another collection. But that painting will remain the same. Sound is a little bit different. Sound is gonna translate, it's going to shift, it's going to move. Even, you know, hearing the same song through your own headphones and hearing that song from the car next to you at the stoplight, it's going to sound different, even though it's the same. But how we receive it and how we share it changes everything about it.
Chad, what are your thoughts about, is it that we need to do something more nationally and internationally to address suicide because, well, how can I say this? For every life that is saved, right? Either they were at the brink, but they held on, they reached out for help, someone spoke to them, they went to a music festival, they saw your organization, so their life took another direction in a positive direction. Or a person might have attempted suicide and they received treatment and they're practicing self-care, right? In the context of that, suicide is still, well, now I think it might be maybe the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. It's the second leading cause of death for youth and upwards to young adults. In my
Up to the age of
state of
35. Yeah.
yeah, in my state, Oregon is the 8th leading cause of death. So are we missing something? Because there are many factors that go into despair and deaths of despair. Or is it that the message needs to be get out more? What else can we do? And then I want to say, every once in a while, and it could be because of my own interest in mental health and suicide, that's the reason on my computer I'm always getting images of people that died by suicide. But there can be, even recently, and all lives are important, but there was like a 24-year-old influencer, right? Young mother with a zillion followers, and now she's dead. Okay.
Yeah.
And it can become disheartening, because we don't want one more life ended in suicide.
Right. The problem, much like the solution, is multifaceted. So is there a marketing problem around mental health and how it's discussed? Absolutely. To whatever degree we allow these headlines about loss due to suicide to remain just headlines, to not advance the conversation, then we are doing a disservice to our communities and ultimately to the legacy of that loved one that's no longer here. That to the extent that we only identify and define suicide as a personal tragedy and not as a public health concern, we are going to keep running into the same potholes and speed bumps and hurdles and barriers to getting people the help that they deserve. So, back when I began working for the organization in 2008, the conversation was solely based on pounding the table and saying, it's about damn time we talk about mental health. That conversation has shifted a bit. If we look at Gen Z, they are more comfortable and more familiar with mental health jargon and definitions than any other time in human history. But we have not seen that conversation result in more people accessing points of care. Why is that? It's not that the stigma is specifically hard or uniquely different from any other age or era. But we see, specifically in the United States, financial barriers coming in the way of people getting the help that they deserve. That you can do a huge fundraiser for cancer research every year, and you can throw money at that and get further in research and in help. But suicide and mental health is not something you can just throw money at and it goes away. Let's just say, Kino, I can reach through my screen and pass you $100 bill and say, solve suicide with this $100 bill. What are you going to do? You could put that towards a local therapist to ensure that they can see their next client on a sliding scale, that will help alleviate some costs there. You could throw that money at a local suicide prevention hotline to ensure that they can keep the lights on, to keep answering the calls, to train up more responders. And that would be a great use of that money. You could identify a good friend that you've fallen out of touch with that is going through a tough time, and you're just going to take them out to have a celebratory dinner honoring your friendship with them. That would be a good use of that money. But at the end of the day, we know that to make progress in the world of suicide and mental health challenges, consistency is needed. We seem to always have the money to fund a new war or a new road or a new building of some sort. But whenever it comes to caring for the people that are building those buildings, fighting those wars, that are making the work happen, for whatever reason, we see that as a wasted investment. So that is what requires a marketing shift, a PR shift, and a level of political and financial accountability to ensure that people have access to the care that they deserve. Additionally, we have become more and more comfortable with this idea that mental health care is health care. That I cannot draw a line in you, Diana, on what is your emotional mental health and what is your physical health. Even beyond that, I can't draw a line to say where your mental health concerns begin and end and where your concerns about being a woman in society begin and end, what your relationship status says about you, what your interactions along culture and religion and race say about you. All of these, you cannot have conversations about mental health without talking about the crisis of houselessness in our communities, without talking about gender dynamics, without talking about race dynamics. All of this needs to be brought to the table. And that's something that we see consistently sidelined. That we believe that simple answers are going to solve deeply intimate and complex challenges and problems that we face day in and day out. So yeah, now is a good time to activate not only your community, to get involved with organizations like AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, to learn how to collaborate more with NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, or any other local initiatives around you, and to contact your local politicians, to let them know that this is something that deserves attention beyond a headline, beyond a press conference. But what are the ways that we are actually encouraging care to happen? And then ultimately, we need to address people in power, people with loud microphones, and how they are discussing mental health. This has taken radical steps backwards. We have, specifically in the States, but Kino, I wouldn't be shocked if you're seeing the same thing in South Africa, people who are using and weaponizing language along the lines of mental, behavioral, and emotional health to create a power dynamic. We need to call that out in the moment as it's happening.
Can you give an example of what you mean, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, that's anything as simple as having a disagreement online and someone say, oh, wouldn't this be better if this person just killed themselves? Calling someone crazy, like using a mental health diagnosis to write them off, when this is someone just trying to deal with pain that they have become familiarized with, right? Like we often see, especially in the year 2026, a lot of ableism speak creep into and interrupt conversations that could have resulted in people feeling more connected, less alone, and having more direct access to the care that they deserve. So you asked a question that I wish had a more simple answer, but I do believe that as a community, doing something on your own is only going to get you so far. So this comes back to square one, that if we are going to see any systemic change, it's going to have to happen in community. And I believe that community is only credible to the degree that it's also diverse. Finding people across generational lines, across the gender spectrum, across cultures, races, and religions to ensure that we are all committed to the same goal, which is ensuring that people get the care that they're looking for.
Thank you, Chad, for exploring that. I want to share with you that with our Hold On campaign, we have funding through the Oregon Council of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And this year, which is our second year, the funding is going to, as an expansion of the Create Resilience Youth Art Contest.
Awesome.
The 6 youth were chosen such that their school will receive $250 to use towards mental health promoting activities. And as you were speaking, I was also thinking of that in the context of what you were saying, because that is generating community and inclusion, and the excitement to see how will they use those funds, right? And I have to say, and it's a challenge to do this work, but part of it is not giving up.
Yeah. Keep showing up. We hear it all the time. Our friends who are part of 12-step recovery groups, their term is keep coming back. There's a lot that's going to happen outside these walls, but if you keep coming back, if we can keep getting refueled and refilled by each other, that is going to help this journey. You've probably heard the proverb before: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
When you were describing, I'll put it in quotation marks, but maybe it doesn't need quotes, marketing, advertising around mental health, I was thinking how the announcements of a death by suicide, that of course, at the very end of the article, they list, if you are having suicidal thoughts, call 988, and they list, it might be, forget the exact name, Suicide Speaks. There's an organization, I'll have to look this up, but it's a sort of a major source that even like the New York Times will refer to this organization for resources. But I was thinking as you were speaking that never have I read an article where the beginning of the article stated there is 988, there are friends who can help, there are local organizations, and also let's explore what can happen that a person feels so desperate that they don't access those things. And this is the story. Let's see a real life story and a tragedy, but let's explore it from that lens.
What if it didn't take a loss in order to spur a conversation? What if we could approach this proactively? What if we could erase, what if we could have more stories about how lives have been saved, as opposed to loss? What are ways we can elevate stories on how people, everyday people, show up for one another, and that, unfortunately, I believe speaks to a deeper concern about being human, which is our interests are piqued in moments of high danger and moments of high stakes. And so I think a piece of it is getting better on a micro level of elevating where help is happening. Mr. Rogers said it best: look for the helpers. You have to look for them because they aren't getting front page stories, but they do exist. That even, in the midst of trying to do good, the best way to not be weary in doing good is to ensure that that there's a coalition, that there is a team around you to keep the efforts going strong.
I want to share with you, Chad and Kino, a story that on the one level, I don't know, it's kind of a weird, silly story, but I think it's also profound.
I love weird and silly.
Okay, so last week in Portland, there was the Construction, Mental Health, and Wellbeing Conference, which is sponsored by the United Suicide Survivors International Organization. And amongst industries, the construction industry, construction workers, their number one cause of death is suicide.
Oh, man.
And this conference invited all types of construction workers, union reps, safety managers, across the United States. Plus there were people from Australia there too, to address the mental health crisis in the field of the construction industry. And the Hold On campaign had a display table. Well, little did I know, and Kino knows a bit of this story, little did I know that a day after the conference ended last week, I would have my kitchen sink backing up, a broken pipe creating a small flood in the basement, and by having plumbers and people in the construction industry in my home helping me, right? And all of a sudden, even though maybe a part of me thought that they'd think it was weird, I said to two of the workers, can I talk to you about something? I was just at the construction industry conference, and suicide is the #1 cause of death in the industry, and I want to give you information about it. And I don't know, I just felt that was kind of profound, right? That you never know where and when help can be given, and that we can be a conduit of sharing, that help.
Absolutely. Because even then, Diana, even if you weren't able to help someone in crisis in that moment, you're still helping. You are still rolling back this idea that there are things that we can talk about and can't talk about. You are saying this is on the table. That if, and even then, like, if we're aware of someone in our life who may be in crisis and we offer help and they turn us down, that doesn't mean that the conversation's shut down forever. It may take a couple offers for them to feel comfortable in accepting that help. So there's nothing to lose in saying that you're here as a compassionate voice. So use your voice, use your presence, use the time that we get to share with one another to your benefit. Not every single conversation needs to be about resources or statistics or whatever, but ensuring that someone feels seen and valued beyond what they can offer you, that's a beautiful, beautiful message to propagate.
So how can our listeners learn more about, To Write Love on Her Arms?
Oh man, well, this was a deep dive. This was dense. There were words and there were stats and there were ideas, and it may take a little time and a few listens to this for it all to soak in. But you can go at your own pace if you visit us online at TWLOHA.com. That's just the acronym for To Write Love on Her Arms. That short word, TWLOHA, TWLOHA. That's our handle on all social media platforms. Feel free to give us a follow there. Or you can always send us an email. That's just to info, INFO, @TWLOHA.com if you have any questions.
Thank you, Chad, for joining us. I really loved our conversation today.
Well, back at you, Diana. Thank you so much for allowing this conversation to happen. Kino, thanks for staying up late. Diana, thanks for waking up early, and I'm glad we could meet in the middle to have this conversation.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, Chad. Thank you.